As time moved forward, I began to understand that healing is not loud, it happens quietly inside the heart. When no one is watching, I stopped explaining my pain to people who could not understand it, and started listening to my own inner voice, which had been ignored for years. I reflected on how society teaches mothers to endure everything silently, and calls it love, while forgetting that love without respect slowly destroys the soul. I remembered moments when my daughter-in-law would correct me in front of others, and my son would stay silent, choosing peace with her over truth with me, and I realized silence can be more painful than harsh words because it confirms where you stand. I had given my son roots and wings, yet he used those wings to fly away from responsibility. Instead of protecting the woman who raised him, I accepted that influence can be powerful enough to rewrite values, and when that happens, blood relationships start to feel optional. I worked on rebuilding my confidence by doing small things for myself: walking alone, reading quietly, breathing freely, and slowly, I felt my strength returning, not as anger, but as clarity. I no longer wished to argue or prove my innocence. I wanted acknowledgement of my humanity. I learned that standing up for yourself does not always mean fighting others. Sometimes it means refusing to shrink anymore. I stopped blaming myself for their choices and started forgiving myself for staying too long in a place where I was no longer welcome. This realization gave me peace and power. I was not abandoned. I was released into a new chapter where my worth was no longer measured by obedience. There were nights when memories returned without warning and sat beside me like old companions, reminding me of the life I once lived inside those walls. I remembered the sound of my son calling my name, the smell of food cooking in the kitchen, and the comfort of believing I belonged somewhere. But memory is strange, it brings warmth and pain together, and I had to learn how to sit with both without losing myself. I questioned how easily love can be replaced by loyalty to someone new, and how quickly a mother can be seen as an obstacle instead of a foundation. I realized that my daughter-in-law did not take my place. My son gave it away willingly because standing up for me required courage he had not yet found. I stopped expecting him to change because expectations without action only reopen wounds. I began focusing on building a life where my presence was valued and my voice mattered. I met people who listened without correcting me and respected me without conditions, and through them I saw what healthy relationships look like. I learned that family is not always defined by blood, but by how safe you feel being yourself. I accepted that my son might return one day with regret, but I could not pause my healing waiting for his growth. I chose to move forward with grace, not bitterness, and strength, not revenge, because survival itself was my quiet victory. I reached a point where every sunrise felt like a quiet promise that my life was still moving forward even without the people I once depended on. I learned to measure my days not by phone calls or apologies, but by how peaceful my heart felt when I woke up. I stopped asking why this happened and started asking what I could become after it. I thought deeply about the power dynamics inside families and how love can be used as a condition rather than a bond. One understood that my daughter-in-law did not just influence my son, she reshaped his priorities, and he allowed it because comfort is easier than confrontation. I accepted that I could not change their choices, but I could change my response. I began volunteering at a local place where older women gathered and shared their stories, and through them I saw reflections of my own journey, stories of sacrifice, silence, and sudden rejection. Their strength inspired me and reminded me that survival is not about youth or money, it is about resilience. I found purpose in listening and being listened to, and that exchange healed parts of me I did not know were broken. I started to feel proud of myself for not begging for love that should have been freely given. I realized that being kicked out did not make me weak, it revealed my strength because I walked away with dignity intact. I practiced forgiveness not to excuse what happened, but to release myself from carrying its weight. Every day I told myself that my worth was never dependent on obedience, and my identity was never meant to shrink to make others comfortable. I imagined a future where I could speak openly without fear and love without losing myself, and that vision kept me moving forward even on the hardest days. Time passed slowly, but it also taught me lessons I never expected to learn about myself and about people I thought I knew. I began to understand that sometimes the people you love most can hurt you unintentionally or intentionally, and that it is not a reflection of your worth but of their choices. I remember the countless times I stayed quiet to keep peace and realized that peace built on silence is fragile and deceptive. I started writing every thought that weighed on my heart, every moment of pain and every flash of hope. It became my therapy, my journal, my witness to the life I refused to let go of. I reflected on my son's childhood and his teenage years and saw how easily boundaries can be forgotten when influence becomes stronger than respect. I asked myself how I could have prepared better, how I could have spoken earlier, but then I reminded myself that life is about learning in real time, not imagining what could have been. I focused on building my confidence from scratch, walking slowly into the world with my head held high and my voice ready to speak without fear. I made friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide or how silent I could be. I learned that being alone does not mean being lonely when your soul is at peace. I began to plan small joys, daily walks, quiet coffee mornings, and conversations with people who listened. I felt my strength returning, not as anger but as clarity and dignity. I realized that my son might never understand my decisions, and That was his choice, not mine. I embraced the idea that standing up for yourself is not about defeating others, but about honoring your own existence. I stopped waiting for validation from those who refused to give it, and instead celebrated every small step I took towards freedom and self-respect. I understood that family dynamics can be complicated and sometimes painful, but it does not erase your value or your right to be treated with love and honor. I promised myself that no argument, no misunderstanding, and no influence would ever make me doubt my worth again. As I continued living my life outside the house, I began to notice small changes inside myself. I felt lighter and more aware of what I truly deserved. I no longer measured my happiness by someone else's approval. I understood that my son's actions were a reflection of his priorities, and not my value. I remembered the times I had compromised my comfort to avoid conflict, and realized that compromise without respect is not sacrifice, it is surrender. I started spending mornings reflecting and evenings writing down my thoughts, letting every emotion flow without judgment. I met other mothers who shared their stories of similar heartbreaks and betrayals, and we found strength in each other's resilience. I began to rebuild relationships with old friends who had been distant because I was always too busy for myself. I laughed more, I cried when needed, and felt emotions without fear or shame. I started taking care of my health with small routines, walking, breathing, meditating, and nourishing my body. I understood that reclaiming your life after rejection is a process, and each step counts, even when it feels small. I practiced forgiving my son, not to welcome him back, but to free my heart from bitterness. I realized that anger and resentment only keep you chained to the past, and my past was not a prison, it was a teacher. I allowed myself to dream of a future where I am seen, heard, and respected, where love is reciprocal and boundaries are honored. I reminded myself daily that being strong does not mean being harsh, it means being firm in your dignity and kind to yourself. I started believing that no one has the power to make me feel small unless I allow it, and that belief became the cornerstone of my newfound freedom. Days turned into months, and each day brought me closer to understanding that my life was not over, it was transforming. I discovered that the house I left was never truly the home I needed. It was a place of rules and control, and leaving it opened a door to freedom. I started exploring new hobbies, reading books I had postponed for years, walking in parks, noticing the beauty around me, and for the first time feeling joy without guilt. I reflected on the relationship with my son and accepted that love does not always come with understanding. I understood that I could love him and still protect myself. I began sharing my story with trusted friends and neighbors, finding comfort in their empathy, and realizing that vulnerability can be a source of strength. I started to plan for the future, imagining a life where I would not wait for someone else's permission to be happy. I felt my confidence return, and every step I took in the world was a reminder that I mattered. I learned to set boundaries firmly, yet gently, and noticed how people began to treat me differently, with respect instead of expectation. I understood that rejection does not define you, but teaches you to choose wisely who deserves a place in your life. I spent nights thinking of my son, remembering his childhood laughter and tears, and forgiving him silently, knowing that forgiveness was for me, not for him. I nurtured myself in ways I had never done before, small acts of care and attention that reminded me that I am precious. I started dreaming bigger, allowing hope to replace fear and determination to replace doubt. I realized that strength is quiet and patient, and true healing comes when you accept yourself fully without needing approval from anyone. I felt my soul grow lighter, and my heart more open, ready to face whatever life has to offer without shrinking. Months passed, and I grew stronger with each passing day. I no longer felt broken or abandoned. I understood that being pushed away had given me a gift, the chance to discover my own strength and independence. I reflected on the times I had doubted myself, the nights I cried silently, and the moments I felt invisible, and I realized that every tear had taught me resilience, every heartbeat had reminded me that I was alive, and every lonely night had strengthened my soul. I began to see clearly how influence and control can poison family bonds, and how easily love can be mistaken for obedience. I accepted that my son's choices were his own, and that his understanding might come too late or never, but I would not let his actions define my life. I started taking small trips alone, exploring places I had dreamed of seeing, embracing the freedom to move and think and speak without restraint. I felt pride in every decision I made, in every boundary I set, and in every moment I chose my dignity over comfort. I revisited memories of my son as a child, feeling warmth and sadness at once, and I forgave him silently, knowing that forgiveness did not mean returning. I prepared myself mentally and emotionally for the day I might see him again. I imagined walking in with confidence and love in my heart, not desperation. I learned that true strength is calm, not loud, firm, not cruel, and love does not demand surrender. I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing I had endured the pain, the rejection, the loneliness, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-aware than ever. I realized that life gives you chances to reclaim your identity, and that the most important relationship you have is with yourself. I closed my eyes at night, feeling peace and power together, a feeling that no one could take away because it was born inside me, and for the first time I felt whole, unshakable, and ready for anything. Finally, after months of pain, reflection, and growth, I reached a place where my heart felt lighter and my mind clearer. I realized that being kicked out by my own son had been the harshest lesson, but also the most empowering. I no longer wished for his approval or feared his anger. Instead, I embraced my own strength and independence. I looked back at every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, and understood that they were shaping me into a woman who could face anything without shrinking. I started dreaming bigger, allowing hope to fill the spaces that fear once occupied, imagining a life filled with love, respect, and joy, where my voice was heard and my presence celebrated. I reflected on the family I had known and accepted that some relationships may never return to the way they were, and that was okay because I had learned that boundaries are essential, and love without respect is not love at all. I felt pride in every choice I had made, in every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity. I forgave my son silently, not to bring him back, but to free myself from bitterness. I envisioned a future where I could love freely, speak openly, and live boldly without waiting for anyone else to decide my worth. I realized that true happiness comes when you honor yourself first, and that survival is not just about enduring pain, but about transforming it into power, courage, and clarity. I smiled, thinking that my story could inspire others who feel trapped, unheard, or unvalued to take their first step toward freedom and self-respect. And as I looked forward, I knew that life was no longer about fear or obedience. It was about choosing myself, loving myself, and standing tall in every moment. I invite you to reflect on your own life, share your thoughts in the comments, and explore how you can take control of your own happiness. And remember that sometimes the hardest trials reveal the strongest version of yourself, and your journey is only beginning. Did you know that one argument inside a family can turn love into distance and respect into silence? I never believed this until the night my own son told me to leave the house I helped build. I am a mother who spent her entire life putting family first, never imagining that one day I would stand at the door with a small bag, feeling like a stranger in my own home. That night changed everything for me, and it started a journey I never planned to walk. I raised my son with love, sacrifice, and endless patience. I worked long hours, cooked every meal, stayed awake through every fever, and celebrated every success. I believed that family bonds were unbreakable, that a mother would always have a place in her child's heart and home. But life has a way of teaching lessons when you least expect them. My son got married, and I welcomed his wife with an open heart. I treated her like my own daughter. I respected her opinions, supported her decisions, and stayed quiet even when things felt wrong. I believed peace in the home mattered more than my own comfort. Slowly, I noticed changes in my son. His voice became distant, his eyes avoided mine, and his words felt cold. His wife began to control everything in the house, from how I spoke to how I cooked, what time I slept, and where I sat. I stayed silent because I did not want conflict. I told myself this was normal, that times had changed, that mothers must step back. But silence slowly turned into pain, and pain turned into loneliness. One evening, a small disagreement turned into a storm. I spoke up for myself. Just once I said I was his mother and deserved respect. That moment changed my life. My son stood there silent while his wife demanded that I apologize. I refused, not out of anger but out of dignity. That was the moment my son looked at me and said words that still echo in my heart. He told me to leave if I could not follow his wife's rules. I felt my legs shake, my heart break, and my world collapse. I never imagined obedience would matter more than blood. I walked out with tears in my eyes but strength growing inside my chest. I did not know where I would go or what would happen next, but I knew one thing: my story was not ending there. I stepped outside the house that night, feeling the cold air touch my face like a reminder that I was truly alone. I stood there for a long time, not knowing where to go or who to call. My hands were shaking, but my mind was awake, replaying every moment that led me to this point. I asked myself how a mother becomes unwanted in the home she once ruled with love. I remember the early days of my son's life when he depended on me for everything. I was his strength, his comfort, and his guide. I taught him right from wrong. I protected him from every storm and believed he would one day protect me too. That belief shattered when the door closed behind me. I found a small place to stay with an old friend who listened without judgment. She watched my tears fall and reminded me that my worth did not disappear because someone rejected me. Her words planted the first seed of courage inside me. As days passed, I tried calling my son, but his phone remained silent. Every unanswered call felt like another wound. I realized his wife had become his voice, and I had been erased from his life. I questioned myself, wondering if I had failed as a mother or if love alone was no longer enough. I began to see how control slowly replaced respect in my home. I noticed how my opinions were dismissed and my presence felt like a burden. I had ignored these signs for too long, believing sacrifice was the duty of a mother, but sacrifice without dignity only leads to pain. Late at night, I sat alone thinking about my future. I was afraid, but also angry, not angry at my son, but at myself for staying silent for so long. I promised myself that I would not disappear quietly. I deserved to be heard, even if my own family refused to listen. This was not just about a house anymore, it was about my identity, my respect, and my right to exist without fear. I knew the journey ahead would be hard, but for the first time I felt something stronger than fear. I felt determination. That night, I made a silent promise to myself: I would stand up for my dignity, even if I had to stand alone. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes, but a clear mind. I realized that losing my home did not mean losing my voice. For years I had lived for others, and forgotten myself. Now I had nothing left to lose, and that gave me unexpected strength. I started remembering the small moments. I ignored the times I was told to stay quiet, the times my feelings were brushed aside. I saw clearly how love had slowly turned into control. I was expected to obey not because I was wrong, but because I was older and easier to silence. I reached out to a community center nearby just to find some guidance. I did not want revenge, I wanted understanding. They listened to my story with patience and respect, something I had not felt in a long time. They reminded me that parents also have rights, and respect does not end with age. For the first time I learned that emotional abuse does not always look loud. Sometimes it hides behind polite smiles and family traditions. I understood that being kicked out was not just an action but the result of long ignored patterns. I began writing my thoughts every night. Putting my pain into words helped me breathe again. Each sentence reminded me that my story mattered, even if my son refused to read it. Days passed, and I slowly rebuilt my routine. I found peace in simple things: morning walks, quiet meals, and honest conversations with people who saw me as a person, not a burden. I started to feel human again. Deep inside, I still loved my son, but love no longer meant silence. I knew that if I ever returned to that house, it would be with respect or not at all. That realization changed everything. This was no longer a story of rejection, it was becoming a story of awakening. I was not broken, I was becoming stronger. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from my son grew heavier with time. I checked my phone every morning, hoping to see his name. Each day passed without a message, and my heart learned how to survive disappointment. I stopped begging for answers and started searching for peace. I looked back at my life and saw how strong I had always been. I survived hard years, raised a child alone for a time, and never gave up. Yet I allowed myself to feel small in my own home. That truth hurt more than being asked to leave. I began attending small support meetings where people shared similar stories. Parents forgotten by children, voices ignored by family. Listening to them, I realized my pain was not unique. That realization made me feel less alone and more understood. One woman told me something that stayed in my heart. She said, "Respect is not a favor, it is a right." Those words gave me courage I did not know I still had. I repeated them every time doubt entered my mind. I started taking care of myself in ways I never did before. I ate better, slept peacefully, and smiled without fear. No one controlled my words or questioned my presence. Freedom felt strange but also healing. Sometimes memories returned without warning. My son's childhood, laughter, his small hands holding mine. I cried quietly, but I did not break. Love can exist without surrendering dignity. I understood then that standing up for myself was not betrayal. It was survival. And this journey was shaping me into someone stronger than before. As the weeks continued, I began to understand how deeply silence can change a person. I was no longer waiting at the window or checking my phone every minute. I was learning how to live without expecting apologies that may never come. I thought about how easily a son can forget the woman who gave him life when influence replaces values and comfort replaces conscience. I remembered the sacrifices I made without counting them, nights without sleep, days without rest, dreams I set aside so he could build his own. And yet in the end my voice became inconvenient, my presence uncomfortable, and my dignity negotiable. I questioned how a wife gained authority to decide my worth and how my son allowed it without resistance. I replayed conversations in my mind, wondering if I could have spoken differently, stayed quiet, or bowed lower. But then I realized respect that demands silence is not respect at all, it is control. I began to see that leaving the house was not my failure, but their choice, and choices have consequences. I was no longer a helpless mother begging for love, I was a woman reclaiming her self-respect. Step by step, I learned to sit with my pain instead of running from it. I allowed myself to grieve the loss of a relationship I thought was permanent. I accepted that some people only value you when you obey and disappear when you stand tall. I started planning my future without waiting for permission. I imagined a life where my happiness did not depend on approval. I knew the road ahead would be lonely at times, but loneliness with dignity felt better than togetherness with humiliation. I promised myself that if my son ever returned, it would be to a mother who knew her worth, not one who apologized for existing.